Sports Social Podcast Network.
This is 3C Body Shop, here to share Gerard's real experience getting his car fixed after he was in an accident.
I drove over something on the road on my way to work really early in the morning and it ruined my car. They took care of everything. They dealt with my insurance and they got me a rental card right away while mine was being fixed. When I got it back, it blew me away. It was absolutely beautiful, like it just rolled off the assembly line. I'm Gerard from Delaware and I would absolutely recommend 3C Body Shop.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted. I am not Irish and I am not Dave. He is skiving at the hospital again for stuff. He just lives there now. I hope he's fine. But I am with Karl. How are you doing, Karl?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you yourself?
6.5 out of 10.
Are you taking a piss?
We have James Milner metaphors to go here, Karl.
I think we are in superb form, considering we have not actually spoken for an entire week.
I know, it's bad form. It's bad form. Blame Dave pretending to be ill, whatever he was doing. Now he's talking about films and stuff. Feel like third wheel here, Karl. Don't like it. But we are here to talk about football. We are going to do the Brentford preview. Well, Dave, hopefully back, I think he's messaging about tomorrow or Friday. So you two will do that whenever the hell you can go together. So we are here to talk about various stuff, Karl, but we are here to start with the Europa League playoffs, which start tomorrow night, because that's what we deserve to talk about after a week away.
Yes, it's our own fault, really. If we'd have planned things better or indeed planned anything whatsoever, then we could have talked about something rather more interesting. Unfortunately, we're going to have to make this called the Crap Podcast so that we talk about the Europa League knockouts and Everton and injuries. So everything, therefore, is crap.
Yeah, the Everton bit might not get too much. So, Europa League playoffs. Do you want to just go game by game, or do you want to just go by team and just say how much we'd like to play them or avoid them? How do you want to do this?
I reckon a marginal preference for going game by game. You predicting a winner or who you'd rather play, that's fine. And then talk about exactly what order we should want Liverpool to face people in. Right,
perfect. So I have it open in Google in front of me. We are going to start with Galatasaray against Sparta Prague. I've obviously seen Galatasaray play Man United this season, and it is just FIFA 2018 people, which is fun, but at the same time, they did outplay United in very much of those stretches and give Bayern Munich games, if I remember correctly. Don't know anything about Sparta Prague, obviously, but travel time, Turkey, it's always horrendous. I feel like I'd rather play Sparta Prague, but Galatasaray should have probably qualified from their Champions League group as well, so I feel like Galatasaray will win, but I'd rather play Sparta.
Yeah, I'd just about be on board with both of those answers. A marginal preference to never play any of the Prague teams again, if I'm being perfectly honest. Just because I always get them muddled up, get them wrong, whichever one it is. Even in looking at this beforehand, I looked at the league table, looked at the fixture, looked back at the league table, and still got it wrong which one I was talking about. So Sparta I'm just triple checking. Sparta definitely are top and have only lost once in the domestic league this season. But that is the Czech Republic domestic league, and it's not usually a great barometer for how good teams are, I suppose. I just find it kind of intolerably Europa League-y when we play teams from Czech Republic, so I'd rather not play anybody from that tie whatsoever. But you're right, Galatasaray should have gone through their Champions League group. They were comfortably the second second best team in football terms, but they were very definitely not the second best team in any kind of consistency, organisation, or defensive framework. That's why you're in the Europa League.
Yeah, they deserve to be there, but they knocked out Man United, so funny. So that'll do us. Next up, we have a repeat of the Conference League final from a couple of years ago. Was it the Europa? Whatever.
I think it was the first Conference League final.
It was the first. Yes, it was. Feyenoord hosting Roma. Then obviously the repeat a week later or whenever the hell it is. I feel like this is probably the one we may want to avoid. I know Roma, it's not Jose Mourinho anymore, so it won't be as horrendous, but I know their league form's improved since De Rossi taken over. I believe Feyenoord are second or third in the Eredivisie, but I know their manager's really highly thought of and they do play attacking football. So maybe this and the next game's probably the teams we want to avoid from quality-wise, at least.
I agree. I think in terms of, in so much there is any kind of glamour tie at all in a knockout game to get into the actual knockout games. Is that even a thing? This is probably the one you'd say steer clear of. Arne Slot is the Feyenoord boss. He was linked with Spurs in the summer. A couple of other teams as well, but I think Spurs
Leeds for some reason.
Whatever that was about. Champions League well within their reach, largely on account of Ajax's abysmal first half of the season. But yes, they are second in the table, miles and miles off PSV. So again, you would think that would be a winnable tie, but they're definitely the better of the options out here. And Roma, doing fine, but then lost to Inter, who are top of the table in Serie A over the weekend. I think this is just basically one to steer clear of, just so that you sort of ease your way back into European football, isn't it? I think overall, I'd fancy Roma to go through here. They should be the better team, but really, neither of them would concern me once it gets to sort of last 8 semi-finals kind of stage. But maybe you just want to avoid them at this exact stage, not this one that they're playing in, but the first one we come in for the last 16. We might as well bring it up now because of why we're picking places and teams that we don't definitely want to go to. The Europa League, the round of 16 games are the 7th and the 14th of March, which from a Liverpool perspective means the first leg comes after we play away to Nottingham Forest, which is fine, but comes 3 days before we will be at home to Man City, which is absolutely not fine. So we want basically as little travelling time as possible, and obviously as absolutely garbage an opponent as possible so that we can rotate as and where we feel necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. We, even if we got a team, we could just play a B team and just play everyone for Man City. I'd be all right with that, to be honest.
To be honest, we don't want to leave everything on the second leg either, though, because that's, like I said, just a week later, and obviously the next league game after we play Man City is against Everton. So, in other words, we could really do with getting drawn against a team who subsequently gets booted out of Europe for fielding an ineligible player, and then we don't have to play the round of 16 at all.
Who's most likely to do that?
Any Italian side.
Galatasaray, definitely. They're just like spawning, I don't know, who's a random Napoli player from 2015.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AEyePro10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
There'll be someone there. There'll be a random Serie A player who just wants a last run at it and he'll appear. I'd guess Roma without knowing too much about Feyenoord. I know they've lost a few key players in recent times, but obviously Mourinho leaving's helped their league form, but I don't think it'll help them in the Europa League, so maybe Feyenoord may get revenge for the final a couple of years ago. But should be an interesting game, which I won't watch. Next up, then, probably another one we want to avoid regardless. Well, I'm not sure how well Rennes are doing in Ligue 1, but Milan, I think they're just kind of comfortably third in Serie A, if I remember correctly. And I'm sure James Horncastle mentioned on the pod I was listening to today that they're kind of comfortably third, so the Europa League may take more precedent for them more than anything. So I'd probably want to avoid Milan.
Yeah, they're like 10 points ahead of Atalanta, who are fourth, and then with Roma and Lazio having a terrible season, Napoli have had a terrible season, so there's not massive competition for them. They're also like 8 points off the lead, so again, they're not probably going for the title. It's really just going to be second or third for them this season, unless there's a massive drop off. So yeah, I would imagine that that's exactly what we'd see, that they'll put as much emphasis as possible on those Europa games, especially if they, get a pretty big team in the last 16. Rennes is not an easy opponent, to be fair, in this sort of knockout game. But their league matches around the last 16 are pretty easy for Milan. They've got Empoli and Verona. So, again, that those are games where if a draw away from home is a perfectly acceptable result, then yeah, the emphasis is definitely going to be on European competition. Why not try and get a trophy, since they are just about getting back to being capable of doing so again? Rennes have been on a good run of late, but before that were sort of mid-table in Ligue 1, so they're up to 7th, sort of competing for Europa spots again. I would imagine Milan have the edge as a squad quite a bit, but we'll see. Either way, this is probably second on the list of teams to avoid in general.
Yeah, and next up, we have Shakhtar against Marseille. Shakhtar have moved. Have they done Poland and Germany for their games, or have they settled yet? I'm not sure. So I remember them playing in, was it Bremen? I think it was Bremen. And I'm sure they played a few games in Poland, but that might be confusing them with the Ukraine national team, actually. But wherever they play, it's going to be far away if it's in Poland, and obviously their team's kind of been decimated in recent times. But Marseille, the other half of the discussion, I don't think they're doing great at the minute in Ligue 1. But France is always volatile, as well. It's not volatile; it's corrupt and all that jazz that we experience in there. But games in France are very difficult. The ultra stuff is probably not stress people want before the Man City game, especially. But Marseille, quality-wise, probably doable. But in terms of the atmosphere and stuff, it'd probably be hostile, similarly to the Galatasaray game.
Yeah, Marseille slightly better again over recent weeks, but they're basically 1.1 place behind Rennes, so just above mid-table kind of thing. Not a good run of results most recently. I just had a quick look while you were talking about Shakhtar there. They've played their most recent games in Turkey, in Antalya.
Oh, right.
They've been sort of friendly matches, so I don't know if that's what they're going to carry on doing post-Christmas, obviously, post-New Year, once they start up again. Their Champions League match against Barcelona took place in Hamburg, so might be a bit of a take-your-pick sort of wheelhouse of where we actually would play.
Just doing both at Anfield, lad, it's fine.
I mean, we used to play like every 3 weeks in Hungary at one point, if you remember, when other people and certain fans weren't allowed into other places and all that. So maybe we just go back there and just play the whole tournament.
Well, what was it? Was it Porto for 2 weeks where they did the semi-finals and stuff? Whatever it was.
Yes,
God,
came back.
COVID Champions League was dreadful.
Fun as a potential alternative ending for future years, I reckon, but not something to do all the time.
Yeah, absolutely not. Would you prefer either Shakhtar or Marseille?
I would prefer to soundly ignore that draw, but if you got to pick one of them, then a marginal preference for Marseille, just again on travel time. I don't want to be traveling massive different time zones and 7-hour flights and stuff like that before we play Man City. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's fair. Young Boys hosting Sporting. I mean, this one probably piqued Dave's interest. If he was here, he'd obviously want to see Amorim up close and personal against Klopp. I'm guessing that'd be the most interesting thing. And Young Boys obviously always in the Champions League and tend to get knocked out Whereas Sporting, they knocked out Arsenal in this competition last year, if I remember correctly. It might have been 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, actually. They'd probably be on the list as one of the tougher opponents. I know they're top of the Portuguese league. I was trying to think of its Premier League or whatever it's called. But I suppose it would be interesting to see Amorim up close and personal. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to see Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen up close and personal either. Maybe till later in the tournament, but probably a team to keep an eye on for later in the competition if they do get past Young Boys.
Yeah, there's intrigue around that tie, I suppose. I wouldn't be against it. I know Sporting are in obviously very good form domestically, and they would be probably seen as, maybe fourth in line, something like that, if they get through this tie to go the distance in the Europa. But again, I wouldn't be overly concerned. It would just mean that it would be difficult to go in with a fully second strength team for a game like this, which wouldn't be ideal. I think, again, this is probably maybe one of the three fixtures across the knockout playoffs, or whatever they're called here, that I would want to avoid. Young Boys, I think, is a fairly routine and winnable game. Maybe slightly further journey than you'd want, but not too outrageous. Sporting is closer, but yeah, it's kind of like a mid-season, pre-season one, isn't it?
Yeah.
For Liverpool lads. Certainly plenty of experience going over there. So I think it'd be okay if Young Boys win. Like, not too bad either way. You can probably rest a few, play a few, and still be in good shape and not get a bad result in the first leg. But Sporting might necessitate quite a strong second leg, which, coming after City and before Everton, would probably not be ideal.
Yeah, wouldn't be great. Probably just avoid Sporting till we have a clearer schedule, if they do get through. Next up, Braga hosting Karabag in this one. We obviously don't want to go to Azerbaijan. Braga kind of scars me from the early Europa League games where
it's a very Europa team, isn't it?
Yeah, like they're the ones with the mountain in their stadium, aren't they?
With the rock at the back of it.
Yeah. It'd be kind of cool to avenge some demons that are just early 2010s Europa League from us, but I'd rather not go to Azerbaijan. And Portugal's not too far, so I think Braga would be fine. I'm not sure how they're doing in the Portuguese league, but
they are the same as every single Portuguese season in the history of Portuguese football. They're fourth.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Perfect. So I'd probably be all right with Braga, not knowing anything about them. But because we're talking about them in unison, we can't risk going to Azerbaijan. It's too bloody far away.
Yeah, I think Braga just have to do everybody in the competition a favour here and win that tie, and then you haven't really got to worry about anything. Like, if you do get Braga and you have to go to them, then it'll probably be a really boring game, and the aggregate scoreline will be 1-0 to whoever they're playing. But you make do with that kind of thing. You don't want to go to Azerbaijan, I'm afraid. Not in this competition.
No, never again. Man, it was the final, was there, wasn't it, with Chelsea?
That was the was it a conference final? Was that the Europa?
No, that was the Europa. Is when
was that the Arsenal Chelsea?
It's when Emery lost his only final because Arsenal do Arsenal things. What a time! Yeah,
no thanks.
Hazard's last game as a professional footballer. What a time! Benfica Toulouse. I presume we can't play Toulouse
because
whether we're in our group, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters from the 16s onwards. It's an open draw then, isn't it? Apart from
I'd take Toulouse again, even though the beat us.
I'm not even sure if nationalities are closed at that point, so I don't think group stage matters whatsoever.
Oh, fair enough.
I'll have a quick look while you discuss.
Yeah, I'd guess so. Obviously, Benfica Toulouse. I think Benfica are sat second in the Portuguese league. I think they drew the other day. Well, that's what Dave said on this podcast, so if that's wrong, it's his fault. Whereas Toulouse, we've obviously seen a couple of times. We had a couple dodgy games with them. They've got a few young players. I think the keeper's quite highly thought of, if I remember correctly. But the Europa group stage is horrendous. Everyone who's experienced knows the group stage of the Europa League is awful. So I'm guessing it'd be a completely different fixture. I'd guess Benfica are favourites for this, Karl. We obviously played them in the Champions League a couple of years ago when Darwin was there, and we decided to buy him off that game, I presume, which is probably doing us not doing our recruitment staff favours, but he did obviously catch the eye. I'd guess Benfica are favourites, but I'd probably be all right with either of these sides. Obviously, Benfica's probably harder than what you want in the early knockout stages, but travel time and the team's second in Portugal. I mean, we've literally, if we beat a Portuguese team, we tend to get to the final. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, Toulouse are pretty poor side. Obviously, we saw that in the groups, like you say. Had a quick look, and no, there's no group stage protection in the draw, okay. So we can definitely get them. Although I would be absolutely stunned if we get them, because Benfica should smash them apart. To be perfectly honest, like Toulouse are like only outside the relegation spots on a single point. So, I think it would be a game we would expect Benfica to comfortably beat them in over 2 legs, unless they have, significant injuries, big games around that themselves, or just do some sort of madness in the away leg, I guess. Benfica do have the potential to do that, but it should be fairly routine. And again, I don't think you'd mind getting Benfica, because it's a team we've beaten like 20 times between them and Porto and whoever else over the last 5 European campaigns. But like you say, slightly harder than you'd want to get, but definitely not one that would hold any fear.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, we earmarked this one as the one we probably want before we started recording, which is Lens hosting Freiburg. You've obviously seen Lens up close and personal because you went to the Arsenal game to see, is it El-Hawaii? I can't remember the bloody name, the striker who you like.
El-Hawaii.
I'm going to give up on that one. And Freiburg, I believe, aren't doing the best in the Bundesliga. They were obviously in a group with West Ham and came second to West Ham. So, math is mathing. We should be able to beat Freiburg. And this one seems probably the one that's not the hardest and not the furthest away. Obviously, France and Germany, whereas Lens, I don't think, are matching their quality of last season. If memory serves, and Freiburg obviously lost a few players in recent times. So, yeah, who do you fancy from this one, both as the winner of the tie? Would you pick either of them to play?
I pick Freiburg as the overall winner, but their current form sort of heading in towards this is fairly abysmal. But Lens are just, not really a good side. That's the simple measure of it. They are sort of 6th in Ligue 1. Freiburg are 7th in Bundesliga. So pick which one you think is better, by all means. Kind of probably be one of those ties which are just decided by either madness or who is in less crap form heading into those matches. I'd have a marginal preference to play Lens. Again, that's simply on distance and not a lot else, to be perfectly honest. Like the squad, probably there's a few more players in Freiburg, so you'd say they could be something, or they could on their day be really tough to break down. But overall, this is the game. If you look at all of them and assess like the risk reward in terms of Liverpool and distance they have to travel and how good their opponent is and all the rest of it, I think this is the tie which is as close to reward as you can possibly get.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. These are probably the two teams you'd pick. So shall we rank our top 3 quickly in terms of who we want, regardless of reason? So I'm guessing Lens, Freiburg. Should we put them equal first?
Yeah, we'll go Lens, Freiburg equal first, just because they're tough to split. I mean, I don't think it'd be probably not going to pick Toulouse to beat Benfica as my number 2, because I just don't think that they will, So I think Lens, Freiburg's a fairly tight tie, so they can go number 1. After that,
I'd kind of like Braga. It's not far away. 4th in Portugal.
Yeah, that's probably as reasonable as it gets after that. So I think it's a fairly tough tie for them to beat Karabag. They're obviously very, very strong at home. So Braga probably have to find a bit more consistency than they've done this season, but it would be a fairly ideal tie for Liverpool as well. So I'll go along with you, Braga.
Wild card, I think Feyenoord would be kind of different, maybe a bit more difficult because they obviously have the history of getting to the final recently. But it'd be a slightly different fixture, and we can roll out Dirk Kuyt to talk about it for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an interesting tie, and I can't remember when we last played Feyenoord. Must be ages. I have no immediate memory of when we last played
No,
them.
I don't either.
I'd probably just about go Marseille myself, just because they're not having a great season, and then it's not much of a journey. But yeah, we should be better than Feyenoord. Let's be honest. Even if we have a couple,
we should be better than everyone we've just talked about.
Yes.
To be fair, Karl. Yeah. In terms of who we'd like to avoid, I think Sporting,
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Karabakh, and Galatasaray for different reasons.
Yeah, Milan after those, but it would be at least a decent and interesting tie.
Yeah, but we're bored of Milan. We play them all the time. And we don't have Nat Phillips anymore. So you can't do spinny spins.
We could bring him back.
I don't think we could register him because he is 74 years old, to be fair to him. Emergency caller. Everyone's injured. But speaking of injuries, look at that. I did an accidental segue. We are going to talk about Liverpool's injuries and how they're going to impact the near future and the rest of the season. Long one out the way, Matip's obviously done for the season. We don't need to talk about him. Thiago and Basetic don't exist. Well, Thiago did for 5 minutes, but yeah, cool. Doesn't matter. They're probably not going to impact the rest of our season. So let's go through the other ones, Karl. Szoboszlai, he's obviously being kind of monstered into the ground, playing-wise. He's played basically every meaningful minute before this injury, which may have caused it, but obviously I'm no medical expert or anything like that. But I feel like we do need to be careful with him coming back because, like, Premier Injuries doesn't even have a return date for him. It says the 25th, but it says that'll be potentially. It doesn't even give it a set date. So Szoboszlai, I think we do have to be careful with it back, and the return date is the cup final. So we've seen problems rushing people back for cup finals, especially the Tottenham one where Harry Kane and Firmino had a who can't move the most matchup. But yeah, Dom, we need him for the rest of the season, so I'd be ultra careful with him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we obviously have to trust that he was in good shape before that Chelsea match when he came back, but a recurrence and that kind of injury for someone who is quite an explosive player is a very, very not good thing. So I think it'll probably be wait until he's back, same as he was last time, plus another week is probably the way to go with that. I mean, the cup final is obviously important for plainly obvious reasons, but I would like to think that we have enough players to, have an 11 plus one optional midfielder. So if he can't make that game, if he can't contribute for that game, so be it. It's a final and I want to win. And I like the domestic cups more than most people seem to these days, but it's obviously not the priority. Like if we get him for quarters, semis and final in Europe rather than the final in domestic cup, I'd do the latter one. Right? Make sure we get the other trophy on as a possibility at least as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we have to protect him, even just going up to the City game, the City game is the biggest one. Obviously, we have to win all our Premier League games in between them. But as you say, we should do without him with the running. But if we can just get him up to speed for that City game, I think that's the most important game left in the season. So get him up for that because we've seen it. The Chelsea game into the Arsenal game. I know Arsenal are very much a lot better than Chelsea, but we missed his running in that game so much. And we have to at least give him a rest and let him recover. Ibu's back from his brain injury, where he got 2 yellow cards being stupid. Alisson was back in training. I think he was ill, so was Joe Gomez. Yeah. So they don't need talking about. And Salah's seemingly back in training, maybe on the bench for the coming game. And is it Luton midweek?
It's Luton midweek. I'd be inclined to.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. and we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Just let Salah have a really comfy chair at the weekend. Like, if he's only fit enough for 20 minutes, 25 minutes or something like that, and again, given the nature of the injury, I'd rather he just wasn't there at all, to be honest. Like, we've got 3 forwards who have been very good and in very good form and scoring goals. We've also got Cody Gakpo to sit on the bench. So I'd rather just go with that for an extra few days, to be honest, than take any risks with him. Salah's one who I would want involved in the final.
Yeah. Because he's not a long injury, is it?
Yeah, and you don't want to take any recurrence risks with a hamstring. So if we don't see him at the weekend, so be it. It's another week until the final then. So presumably we can beat Luton without him.
Yeah, maybe bench for Luton. Nothing for Brentford. Just watching. Oh no, it's half time. I was going to say illegal stream for Brentford. No, he can watch it on TV legally. Lucky guy. Yeah, so he's nearing back. It even says 25% for the next game, but we'll know more on Friday when Klopp does his press conference. So yeah, he's nearing a return, but just protect him. So yeah, Luton at the earliest, I presume. Conor Bradley, we can't really discuss because I think did he come back to training? Well, obviously,
he was back to training yesterday.
Yeah,
in the he did the morning session at the very least. So I guess that's like he's fine and fit to play. Obviously, it's just whether or not he is in the headspace too. Yeah. If he's ready, maybe whack him on the bench and see how ready he actually is. But only he can kind of determine that, I suppose. Thiago Bacetic, a sentence is worth talking about. I mean, it was nice to see confirmation Thiago still exists, but it wasn't a good confirmation.
Yeah, that's the thing. And to bring him on with 10 minutes left when we basically already lost the game, it's kind of really annoying. But hey-ho, hopefully Klopp's right and it isn't. That wasn't his last game for Liverpool. I think he's 2 away from 100, so even if he is injured, if we're not going to the league for the last 2 games, just whack him on 90th minute and he can just hobble about and get 100 games. Bacetic, we don't really know. I think Curtis Jones went through these growing pain things, didn't he? And he was like very much in and out for...
So did Gerrard, if you remember, even further back.
Yeah. Gerrard had to play every single game as well, to be fair to him. But yeah, it's weird. Our youngsters... We need those messy steroids. But yeah, I doubt he'll... Maybe if there's some nothing games towards the end of the season, maybe he might get an appearance, but pre-season might be the time for him to just get ready for the next season. And probably, maybe not the big one, because Dom's obviously huge, but Trent obviously played the last 2, Karl, and he didn't look fit against Arsenal, that's for bloody sure. And he was awful against Arsenal. And Burnley, again, didn't look comfortable and felt something and clearly got subbed at half-time. It's just, again, it feels like the Dom one, we just kind of have to be careful with him because this is a lad who has basically played every meaningful game for Liverpool since 2018. So, obviously, he's used to playing every game, but that doesn't mean he should play every game. So we have to get him back fit. And obviously, with Bradley now back, maybe have to think about his role. But I think that discussion's going to go on till the end of time. But probably similarly with Moore, if he's not, it says 25% on Premier injuries, so maybe nothing for Brentford. See if he's ready for the bench for Luton. But if he's even like a small unfitness doubt against Chelsea for the cup final, we've seen what an unfit Trent looks like, and we can't take that into a cup final.
No, I mean, like, the problem is that it's not so much the unfit Trent as the out of rhythm Trent. It's when he comes back, he's one of them players who seems to need like 3-4 games to get back into the groove, to find his level, technical level, his sharpness of, change of direction, all the rest of it. That's my bigger concern with Trent. He's not someone who just comes back into the team after 4 weeks out and just suddenly plays really well. So, I mean, the more important thing, obviously, is not to have any recurrence of injury again. If it was the exact same thing and it just needs more time, then kind of so be it at the minute, especially because even aside from Bradley, we've got Tsimikas back now as well. Mm-hmm. So we have 2 options for the left, which means Joe Gomez is freed up to play on the right again. So even without Trent, if he has to be out for, 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, 5 more weeks, whatever it is, we do have 2 options again who have played well this season at right back. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm not going to say it's not important, because obviously he's still the best player there, but it's less immediate that we need him to be rushed back, which in the past was definitely not the case.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think Bradley's form before his father's sad passing was so good. As long as he's in the headspace, we can be very much comfortable with Trent. And obviously with the midfield injuries and the need to be more careful with Dom, it seems natural to me that he could play there. But as you mentioned, we've got 2 left backs, 2 right backs, with Gomez counting as a right back, but he could be the 3rd left back as well. We don't need to rush Trent at all. And the games we have coming up, we obviously need Trent's creativity, but with Moore coming back and Darwin just kind of making stuff happen, I think his role, maybe not less important's the wrong word, but less over-reliant than we have been in previous seasons. Obviously, Mac passing from deep, Curtis can have those very creative games as well, and we can just sub on Elliott any point in the game and he'll become a good player, so that's fine. But that's basically it for injuries. Should we do Chelsea first, or do you want to talk about Ev? Which one would you prefer?
We've been leading into the League Cup final a bit with the injuries, so we might as well do that.
We might as well. Now, you posed the question as their improvement, and I kind of agree, but the results are still very wishy-washy. Like, they've had some impressive ones. Crystal Palace isn't impressive because they were missing their 2 players and their best 3 players, I should say, and are still managed by Roy Hodgson somehow. But beating Villa away in the Cup, very impressive. I know Villa have kind of fallen off recently. But before that, beaten by Wolves 4-2. Then it was our game against them where we pummeled them. 0-0 with Villa in the Cup's impressive enough. Beating Borough's just mean and bullying. Beating Fulham, God, that game was awful. Losing to Borough, beating Preston, that mad game with Luton at the end of the year, beating Palace, losing to Wolves. Christ, why can't they play Wolves? But again, since the middle of December, they beat Sheffield United 2-0. But before that, losing to Everton, losing to Man United.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Losing, just about beating Brighton. So since December, it's been a very mixed bag. But do you take their improvement as in partnerships in midfield? Like Caicedo and Enzo, I know everyone's probably heard Dave's pointing at that they don't really suit each other. I kind of agree, but I think it does, when they're playing well, it does look better. But defensively, I agree with everything Dave says about Thiago Silva. He's so very limiting in a 2024 now defensive system. You just can't play that deep anymore and be a good team, I don't think. The attack is like Palmer's played well. Nkunku, we don't know yet, but we know he's a good player. But everything around that, I don't know. I feel like it still needs to change, but they can't because Mudryk cost 90 million and has 75 years left, and he's shit. But he'll obviously now score in the cup final. I've said that. But I feel like there is some promising things there, but it's not enough to get them where they need to be considering the money spent.
Yeah, I do think that there's slow progress, but it's so slow, it's bizarre. Like, realistically, for the shambles that Chelsea were, I don't think Pochettino's done too badly to get them to this point. But there are a couple of things which either should have been changed already or have just been weirdly continued. Like, Silva is one of them, but then on the other hand, I kind of understand him having to be there when so many of the other players they've got are either new or have played like 26 games in their career, or just all thrust together in this massive new group, and nobody knows each other, nobody's played with each other and all the rest of it. There's been so much expenditure, so much change. I a little bit understand a manager playing someone who, one, he has obviously managed before, and two, a player who has been there the longest time and has won the most stuff and all the rest of it. I don't think it does them many favours in performance terms, but maybe for, I don't want to say like leadership and all of that, but just for the organisation and stability, sometimes I think that does make more of a difference than maybe other people have suggested. So I a little bit understand it, even though I think it's too safe and is ultimately wrong for the long-term progression of the team. On the other hand, it's taken Pochettino like about 50 million months to put in Malo Gusto at right back, and suddenly when he's playing, A, they're quite good down that side of the pitch, B, he's good defensively, and C, you let Axel Disasi play in his actual position, which, you know, seems to be three good things to me, but it's taken this long for him to do it.
It was weird because didn't they play Cucurella at right back for a little bit? It's like, it's very
Cucurella played right back. They've had who's the young wing back there, Maatsen, who played at the start of the season a few times, sort of as an inside left player and a left back, and then he played right back for a game as well. Disasi obviously went out there. Reece James has come straight back in every time he's been available and then gone straight back out again. So it's a little bit weird that it's taken Gusto so long. But he seems to just lately have settled on Gusto with Madueke ahead of him. I think Noni Madueke is he's obviously a talent, but he's really inconsistent. So it's just about starting to get those partnerships and understandings. And like you say, Caicedo and Fernandes, I think when they're disciplined, or when one of them is disciplined, or when they understand each other has to be disciplined, when one of them goes forward, it's fine. They're good enough to cover it and they're mobile enough to cover that ground. But until you get those, 20, 30, 40, 50 games alongside each other, I don't really understand how he can just expect that it is the case. I think both of those midfielders would be perfectly fine if, instead of playing Conor Gallagher ahead as a 10, they had, let's say, 2 years ago Fabinho as a 6 behind them. Then you've got two really rampaging ball winners who can go as high up the pitch as they want, who are both decent in terms of final third passes, and Fernandes is obviously decent in terms of getting in the box and shooting and all the rest of it, but they don't have that. So they both have to do the job between them. And in terms of their natural runs, let's say, it's a little bit like Gerrard Lampard back in the day, because both of them want to get forward, both of them want to be ahead of the ball, both of them want to challenge for the ball quite high upfield. Different individuals, obviously, different styles overall, but similar in terms of areas of the pitch and how they try to win it back. So I do think it's a fine partnership to work on. but other aspects of the team around it still need to be meshed to that and where they go, let's say.
Do you think, obviously, Lavia, when we were, he was seemingly the backup, he was initially the first plot idea and then went, Caicedo's there. And then they bought both, like twats. Do you think he is actually the idea as their number 6 and let the other two kind of do what they do? Or do you I genuinely think they just bought him to kind of spite us? Because Lavia is more of a sitting 6 compared to Caicedo. But again, Caicedo in a free, Lavia, Caicedo, and Enzo in a free just screams zero balance to me as well.
I don't know. I think it's fine. There's not obviously creativity in the playmaker sense, but Enzo is a really good passer of the ball. Caicedo is a really good ball carrier. So I do think that there's enough of a combined skill set there to work if they have someone else sat behind them. I just think that Lavia, while Saints did play him as the deeper sitter, and I think he can be that in time, he's nowhere near it now in terms of an elite level player. So he wouldn't be able to just start and suddenly make them a top 4 candidate.
But we are talking about a team that is 10th, so...
But I mean, I just don't think that is one thing that's missing for them to get to that level. And even if Lavia does come in and they do flip that midfield triangle, I don't necessarily think he's naturally a fit there. I think he's a little bit more, a little bit more Enzo out of the two of them. Like in terms of, he likes to get on the ball. He's a good passer from deep. He's not quite as chaotic, let's say, as Caicedo can be in terms of where he closes down and the fact that he likes to go make tackles everywhere. I do think that Lavia is a bit more holding fort centrally, but just not as a pure anchor.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Because even if they do move to a midfield 3, I don't see how that suits their attack either.
Well, it doesn't. Yeah, they have too many players for the same roles is the problem, which is obviously a really weird recruitment thing because they have, again, too many players, too many people in that role because they've got like 3 sporting directors all taking charge of different stuff. So they are lacking at least 2 players to be fixed in the positions that they play at the minute. Like even Cole Palmer, he's played a couple of games as a false 9 just to get him in the team because he has to play, because he has to be on the ball as much as possible. But then you saw against Aston Villa when he moved out wide and could have a bit more space and runners ahead of him and so on and so forth, much, much more effective. And again, the same against Crystal Palace. So there's things to improve. I just think that there's just too many components at the minute. I think that's their biggest overall problem.
Yeah. Let's go through what we think is their best team, because I'm guessing Thiago Silva will play the final unless he gets injured. So I'd guess
he is injured at the minute.
Is he?
He is. He took a knock, but they haven't given a timeline or anything at the minute.
Right. So let's say he doesn't exist at the minute. So I'd say Petrovic is better than Sanchez, but it doesn't really matter. James doesn't exist, so we'll put him in the Thiago category. Both Silva and Alcantara. So Gusto, 2 Monaco lads, because Colwell seems to be left back or bust.
He came on for Thiago Silva against Palace, so
Badiashile's injured as well, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, I can't remember now. I don't really like Badiashile, so I'd be playing Colwell over him in any case. So Disasi and Silva or Disasi and Colwell at centre back is my expectation.
Either way, I don't think it's nothing special. So yeah, I think I'd probably rather have Colwell over Badiashile, to be fair. I think Colwell and Fofana would, obviously Fofana is very much in the doesn't exist category as well, but it's a shame he's made out of Pringles. Well, for them anyway. Left back, Chilwell's obviously back and is their captain, which still bemuses me. It says Gusto's injured on this. Like that. Let's load up the Chelsea thing. They have 9 injuries. I reach Gusto's fine. He's 75% back. Who cares then? So Gusto, Disasi, Colwell, Chilwell, midfield, Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher. Well, I think Gallagher's obviously been important for them. but Nkunku probably starts as the 10, unless he starts off the left. Because I'd say Jackson, albeit he's very random and can be shit, but I feel like him playing up front and Palmer off the right's better than the false 9 thing they're doing.
Yeah, I think that if Nkunku has a good outing or a good game between now and the final, we end up seeing Gallagher as the 10, Nkunku up front, and Jackson and Cole Palmer on the flanks. And then Noni Madueke moves to sub.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I'd agree with that. It's very, like, I like Madueke, but again, I'd say Palmer off the right's better at the minute, obviously. It's just Nkunku, like, I know that he was their big ticket signing, but to be dependent on your attack clicking on a lad who's not played a game for you ahead of the season is very strange. But that's weird. But I suppose next season will probably be his big season unless he keeps picking up injuries. Or they can just bring back Ziyech again. I'm pretty sure they still own him. He can just play that right wing. But I don't want to like jinx it ahead of time, but it's nothing that worries me. Like Nkunku obviously in that 4-1 game came on and made an impact. But I feel like he made an impact because we made 4 bloody subs and it kind of messed us about rather than... Obviously, it was a moment of individual quality, but if we play like we did at Anfield, I don't see what they can do to interrupt us.
Nothing. If we play like we did against Chelsea at Anfield, there isn't a team in the Premier League other than Man City who can live with Liverpool. That's the truth of the matter. And around most of Europe, the same. The problem will come if, one, we cannot, because obviously Wembley being slightly spacier pitch than Anfield, maybe the closing down, maybe the energetic front line is not quite as sustainable as it was for that Chelsea game, because it was nearly the first 70 minutes or so was just relentless. So that's a very difficult thing to replicate. So that's one potential thing. I do think their midfield is a lot better than it played on that night. And, maybe because of how that game went, Pochettino makes some alteration along the line as well. It could be flip the midfield triangle. It could be play with the back 3. I suspect it would be the former if he does anything. But you also imagine that just from a professional sportsman's perspective, if it's even the same lineup and the same shape and the same tactical approach from Chelsea, they just make themselves be better than they were in that game, because they were pretty embarrassed, let's be honest.
Oh, they were awful. To be fair, I don't think we'll be able to match that at Wembley, as you say, for the reasons. And us in cup finals, just we don't ever play well for whatever bloody reason. Oh, certainly not to that level of well. But there's a first time for everything. But yeah, Chelsea can't play as bad as they did at Anfield. And obviously, it is contracted to finish 0-0 or 1-1 and go to penalties, and weird stuff happens. Shall we move on to Everton for the last 5-10 minutes or so?
Go on, then.
They're a bit shit, aren't they?
Look, what a weird team. Obviously, they are not 18th in the league in terms of points earned because of the deduction, but when we last spoke about them, they would have been like 11th and comfortably in that middle group of tables of teams in the table. Now, without the points deduction, they would be 12th because, they had those points to begin with, but they're actually like in that next group of teams now. Like points-wise and where they would be in the table is now in the 12th to 15th category rather than the 8th to 11th category. So although it's only one place in theory that they would have moved down, they've dropped from mid-table teams into the teams who are not fighting relegation.
The Crystal Palace Brigade.
Yeah, exactly that. Like just the absolute garbage of the year, basically. Like teams who are not good enough to do anything because they're not bad enough to go down. And that's just a really rubbish place to spend your existence, let's be honest. Going out of the FA Cup to Luton at home, I mean, Luton are on a good run and obviously doing very well for Luton. But if you haven't won a trophy in a bazillion years and you have a chance to go to the quarterfinals, more or less, or the round before the quarters, whatever it was, against one of the worst teams in the league this year, and you lose at home and barely lay a glove on them, I don't know what you're doing as an entity, as an ongoing concern. It's just stupidly bad. I mean, they already needed a replay to get past Palace, who are equally dismal this year as Everton are. And those two play each other Monday night. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first Premier League game in history where both teams lose. They're that bad at the minute.
Wait, Everton versus Crystal Palace is Monday Night Football?
I believe so.
Oh my God.
So if you haven't got plans, make some quickly.
Yeah, setting fire to your... Oh my God, it is. Setting fire to yourself is going to be more enjoyable than that.
So, I mean, like they are in the relegation zone. They're a point behind Luton. They're 2 points behind Nottingham Forest. I still don't think that this Everton team can possibly go down. Like, there's just too many players there who are of Premier League caliber. But again, the style of play just is so poor at the minute. It's now since mid-December, 16th of December. So we're 2 months almost to the day when we record this. And their only victory in that time has been a 1-0 FA Cup replay win over Crystal Palace. I mean, they are just irritatingly pointless existence, just continues to be the case. That there's just very, very few redeeming factors about them other than individual players who, in the hands of another team or another coach, if you want to have a go at Sean Dyche, or another environment, if you want to have a go at the crowd or whatever, could be fun to watch. Like Mikolenko down the left-hand side should be decent. Onana, we've spoken about a billion times. He's a really good player. They have forwards who have been hunted previously in the transfer market who just can't shoot anymore. Like Jack Harrison has maybe been their standout performer. He got relegated with Leeds last season and wasn't good enough to start all the time. It just goes on and on and on. Jared Branthwaite has been spoken about as a potential England candidate. I presume just because he's 21 and
he's left-footed.
that as well, and he's massive, to be fair. And I think he's a decent defender. But when are they putting all of this together? It's just not happening. And like there are certain components of the team who, again, are just so far below the required quality level this year and playing reasonable parts of the team. It's not pretty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned the last win was the 16th of December. I mean, that was part, I can't remember when the news broke about the points deduction. I think it was the start of December, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong with that. But that was the end of a 4-game winning streak for Everton, which obviously accounts for a lot of their points this season. And since then, I mean, there has been some tough games. I mean,
18th of November was that announcement. So they won a few games after that.
Yeah.
So it can't even be the excuse that they use.
Right, no, that's fine. But I mean,
they beat Forest, Newcastle and Chelsea after that, and Burnley, in fact. So
fairs. But since that 16th of December, losing to Tottenham, fine. Losing to Man City, fine. Losing 3-0 to Wolves. Like, I know Wolves have had a surprisingly good season, seeing as everyone thought they'd be terrible. But 3-0 to Wolves? Wolves seemingly play mainly well when they can counter-attack. Nobody's counter-attacked on Everton in 25 years, because you can't. They don't move forward. The dreary Palace games in the Cup. Draw with Villa, that's a good result. Beating Palace in the Cup, who cares? Losing to Luton in the Cup, awful. 0-0 with Fulham, that's fine. Dreary, awful game. 2-2 with Tottenham, that's a good result. I think it was a last-minute equaliser, if I remember correctly. And losing to City. So it's not been the easiest fixtures, but apart from Tottenham, who have meme DNA and Tottenham DNA, like, there's not one result where you go, that's a really good result. But like that Wolves one, for a Sean Dyche team to get beat 3-0 by what should be another mid-table challenger, that's kind of worrying.
It is, and like, away from home, they've not scored in the last 4. Now, again, this is an ongoing problem from a while back. They looked like they'd sort of found a way to be a bit better goal-scoring form, but, well, 1 goal in the last 5 games, and the 1 goal that they scored was very late on when they were already 2-0 down, so an irrelevance, basically. So away from home, a real issue, and not difficult games. Like, they got a draw at Palace, they got a draw at Fulham. Sorry, they got a draw at Palace, but that was the cup game. They got a draw at Fulham. So they're not really, really tough games either. Like Everton, Man City was the last away game that they had. Their next away games are Brighton, Man United, both in better form recently. Bournemouth, I don't see them beating Bournemouth. Newcastle, back in form. Chelsea, better form, as we've just discussed. Luton, they've already beaten them in the Cup. Are they going to go to Luton and win? I don't think so. Arsenal away is their last away game. So are they going to win any more away games this season? Like, are they going to get many away points this season? Because if not, that's placing quite a lot of pressure suddenly on your home form, where again, they've won one of the last six. So form overall, a problem. But I think we have to say at this point, especially home form, because again, they're not wildly difficult opponents that they've had other than Man City at Goodison either. And then the next games, like we said, they played Crystal Palace, which is suddenly a really important game on the Monday night. And then the visitors to Goodison after that, West Ham, Liverpool, they're both going to be difficult. And then suddenly you're relying on your last four home matches where you've basically got to win them all to try and stay up. That seems to be the position that they've put themselves in.
Well, yeah, we mentioned the dreaded Monday night football game. If they beat Palace, they'll be 1 point behind them, not 2 points behind them. So if they beat Palace, they then drag Palace into the relegation scrap, depending on the other results around them, obviously. But if they lose to Palace, they'd then be 8 points behind Palace, which would probably keep Palace safe. And Roy Hodgson would keep his job for another year and terrorise us all. Which I hope doesn't happen, just for the sake of my own sanity. But, again, after that, Brighton, they have a weird record against De Zerbi, so maybe that's the game where the away record goes. But logically, Brighton should win that, barring voodoo. West Ham at home, winnable considering what the hell's happened at West Ham in recent weeks, but if they get their good players back, who knows? United, Everton don't beat United, especially at Old Trafford. Then it's the derby. That will be an awful game as usual. Going to Bournemouth, as you mentioned, Bournemouth are weird at the minute, but if they get their AFCON players more settled back into the team, they might go back to where they were before AFCON disrupted them a bit. Newcastle away, tough place to go. Hosting Burnley, again, huge. Going to Chelsea, who knows? Hosting Forest and the penultimate game of the season is no, that's not. But that's the penultimate game of April, I should say. I forgot to scroll down, but that's a massive game. Brentford could be a massive game still if Brentford's form doesn't continue to pick up. Luton, third from last game at Luton, as you mentioned, that, and then hosting Sheffield United. I'm guessing Sheffield United will probably be down by then, but playing for pride, that might be. I don't know or care who Sheffield United play on the last day, but it could be seen as their last opportunity to win. And going to Arsenal on the last day of the season, where Arsenal would be hoping to be playing for the Premier League, it's going to be horrendous. Unless Arsenal implode again like last season, there is zero logic to Everton winning that game. So this Palace game coming up is massive for both teams. Like, we obviously don't want to delve deep into Palace at the minute because I don't want to shoot myself in the face. But if they lose to Palace on Monday, I'm not saying Sean Dyche should be sacked or something, but something needs to be rejigged there. Like, you mentioned it, McNeil and Mikalenko should be good together. Harrison's fine as a player, but your away tactic can't just be kick the ball 80 yards to Calvert-Lewin and see what happens. Like, that's probably fine against City because you were going to lose that game anyway. But if you're trying to do that against Bournemouth or whoever, like, that's pathetic. You need to try and win these games because if they get another point deduction, they're just dead and buried, I think.
Yeah. I don't think that they can really worry or rely on that anyway, of getting another deduction or not getting another deduction. If they do, it's out of their hands and it's from before most of these players were there. They just have to win enough games to stay up this year, to be honest. And they can argue that they have done because they would be, like we said, 12th. But the reality is that if they want to be in the Premier League next year, they have to do it again. So I think if Everton beat Palace, that might be the game that Hodgson is removed after. Possibly because they are then in a relegation fight and it's such poor form. But like you say, 8 points then suddenly between Everton and Palace if the result goes the other way. And that is kind of the end of it for Palace being in the drop zone, because they'll probably get another, two wins at
7
least
draws
along the way. Yeah, and then you're sort of mid-30s already for them. That'd take them to, 33 points, I think. And I don't think it's going to be above 34 points to stay up this season. So then you would be down to, assuming Burnley and Sheffield United gone, then it's suddenly only 3 teams left: Forest, Luton and Everton, and that's it. So it's a massive, massive game for their season.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Anything to finish on Everton before we finish up, or any other topics you want to bring up?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, I don't think that there's too much to talk about for Everton beyond Monday night. I think that, not that their season hinges on it, they can obviously still drop in even if they beat Palace, but I do think that that is one which might have to be the turnaround fixture for them, just because their away form is so bad. Like, you have to rediscover how to score before you can win matches, unless you're just going to rely on teams scoring own goals for you. I think next week, the 3 midweek matches that there are is going to start to determine quite a lot at the top and bottom.
Yeah, worrying times for Everton. Everton indeed. Anything to plug before we go, Karl?
I'll have peace outs before the weekend when I am heading to Brentford for our match against them. We'll obviously be doing the Scouted with Dave on Friday. I think we've agreed to do it now.
Yeah,
so that will be out for Friday before the match. Not sure what else. Might have a European piece as well now that the Champions League is back, but that could be after the weekend's games as well.
Worst Champions League in my lifetime, by the way. It's god awful. There's not one interesting game in there. Hopefully it improves, but I couldn't even be bothered watching last night or tonight. But plugs from me: I'm going to do Tadiwa's EPL show in about 45 minutes, so I'll be on that over on EPL. And I will be on a couple shows on Friday, I believe, as well. But that's it from me. Dave's back Friday, hopefully, so they'll be doing Brentford, as Karl said. But thank you for listening. Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.